I am Peggy Kvam, member of the League of Women Voters of Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Hopkins, and your moderator for the Minnetonka School Board Candidate Forum. I would like to welcome all of you tonight on behalf of LWV Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, Hopkins, and LWV South Tonka. The League of Women Voters, a volunteer, nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Representatives for LWV will be available in the lobby after this forum to meet with the candidates and the audience. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. It is our purpose in sponsoring meetings such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss issues face-to-face that are important to you. In screening questions, we have made a good faith effort to include questions on topics that are of general interest. When necessary, we have rewritten questions to make them applicable to all candidates, forward-looking, not personal in nature, and relevant to this forum. There is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time and setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, feel free to contact the candidate directly. This event is now being broadcast live on District TV and will be rebroadcast repeatedly in its entirety. It will also be available by streaming video and at www.lwvmeph.org. Individual recording and photography that does not disrupt this event is allowed. Tonight's questions have been submitted online and by our live audience. Cards become the property of the LWV. If the question was unclear to you, feel free to submit a follow-up question or to ask the candidate after the forum. And now I will introduce our candidates for the Minnetonka School Board election. First we have Sally Browne, Kemerie Foss, Karen Jordan, Chris Kratoska, Dan Olson, and Michael Remucal. Also, we have Brandon Voges, who was invited but was unable to attend. He has submitted a written statement, which I will read after the other candidates make their opening remarks. Thank you to the candidates as well as the audience for coming tonight. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements. Following that, the candidates will have 1 minute to respond to questions submitted by the audience or online. Response order will be randomized. Our candidate forum will wrap up with 1-minute closing statements from each candidate. So for opening statements, we will start with Sally Browne.
Good evening, I'm Sally Browne, and I'd like to start by acknowledging the League of Women Voters and all of the Minnetonka High School and district staff who are making this forum possible. I also want to recognize the community members here in the auditorium, those who may be watching the live stream or may watch the recording later, for your civic engagement. I'm a lifelong area resident. My own love of learning was first ignited in Mrs. Pastick's kindergarten class at Clear Springs Elementary School. I'm still an active member of my church in Excelsior, in which I grew up, and where the values of active participation in community and service to others were first instilled in me. I have 6 children, and this year marks the 27th year straight of having kids enrolled in the district. I'm sure you'll be hearing more about the experiences of our family throughout the evening. In February of 2022, I took early retirement from a long career at a financial services company to pursue my passion for volunteering, which included the opportunity to become a founding partner of West Interfaith Community Engagement. I had the opportunity to serve as a PTO co-president at MMW, to be an adult ally to the amazing student leaders of the Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education, and a team manager for Tonka United Soccer. Professionally, I'm an executive, organizational, and team coach consultant. I mainly work with Fortune 500 companies, guiding them to discover better ways of organizing and enabling their employees to do their life's best work. This year, with 3 Minnetonka School Board incumbents with a total of 32 years of service to the board, not running for re-election, I feel called to contribute my experience in the district, my familiarity with board operations, my many community connections, and my professional skills in service to the community as a member of the Minnetonka School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kemerie Foss.
How many times have you heard, "We moved into Minnetonka for the schools"? Minnetonka has nationally recognized student achievement, outstanding parental satisfaction, and a very strong financial position. With strong leadership on the board, Minnetonka will remain the top district of choice in Minnesota. Hi, everyone. I am Kemerie Foss. I'm the mother of 2 children who have both experienced many of the excellent opportunities offered to them in the district. I have been involved in the district for more than 13 years, including the Minnetonka Schools Foundation Board, where I worked alongside the school board and developed an understanding of the workings of the district. I am an independent thinker. I have an understanding of the role of governance and a passion for public education. My focus has 3 primary points. The kids, seeing, serving, supporting all kids to feel safe and do their best. The dollars, fiscal responsibility is crucial to maintain staffing and programs. And the sense, a kind and common sense approach to building toward the future of Minnetonka schools. You can count on me to bring people together. Together we are stronger, together we are kinder. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about myself this evening.
Thank you. Next, Karen Jordan.
Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and Minnetonka Schools for providing the facility, and all of you in the audience, in person and streaming from home. It is an honor to be with you tonight. My name is Karen Jordan. I grew up on a ranch in Montana where I learned the value of hard work. I attended Concordia College and studied international relations. After graduation, I moved to Russia, where I taught English and started assisting American families with adopting Russian orphans. It was an honor to work with many amazing families and help them navigate the emotional process of completing an adoption. I did adoptions because I recognized that children need families to love them today, not in 2 years or 5 years, but today. I am running for Minnetonka School Board because I recognize that our children need an excellent education today, not in 2 years, not in 5 years, but today. Minnetonka Schools is a very special place with top educators, families, students, administrators, and staff who love this place and work together to provide an excellent environment. Family is important to me. I am married with 2 sons. Parenting has broadened my perspective and focused my energy on the next generation. It is imperative that we educate and prepare them for an ever-changing world. In the last 2 years, I have observed approximately 90% of the Minnetonka School Board meetings. As I observed those meetings, it became apparent to me that the people in this district always want to improve. We're fortunate to attend this district. As a school board member, I would focus on maintaining the strong financial foundation, securing a safe and welcoming school environment, and ensuring that every child receive the learning opportunities needed for a successful future. I look forward to participating tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Chris Kratoska.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris. I've got a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. Our 5-year-old just started kindergarten at Clear Springs. When I was 12, I became very interested in making money. To my dismay, none of the local businesses around me would hire a 12-year-old, and so I got the only jobs I could, and that was babysitting and reffing little kids' soccer games. Through these jobs, I discovered I had a talent and a passion for working with kids. Over the next 10 years, I coached baseball, volleyball, snowboarding, swimming, and fencing teams. I was a manny for several families, and I tutored students in math and history. In my 20s, I was the assistant director for a small business. You might be familiar with the model. We teach after-school enrichment classes, so kids would stay after school for an hour on Tuesdays, and they'd learn chess, fencing, basketball, that type of thing. Over the course of the 7 years I was there, I had a really unique opportunity to visit the majority of elementary schools around the metro area. And I can tell you through experience that Minnetonka schools have something special to them. You can honestly feel it walking into them. And if you haven't had a chance to be at a whole bunch of other elementary schools, it's definitely true. Due to this experience of teaching in over 100 elementary schools, when my wife and I had our first child, Kemerie, you'll like this, we were looking for our first house and we wanted to come to Minnetonka. We moved here for the schools. That was almost our primary objective when we were looking for a house. We wanted to raise our kids here, and my son has just started that journey. As we moved here, I began running my business, an education center where we teach kids to code by helping them build video games. Over the last 5 years, I've had the chance to work directly with some of Minnetonka's best and brightest elementary and middle schoolers, as well as employ several high schoolers. We're a magnet for neurodivergent and
Your
advanced
time
learners,
is
and we
up.
prided ourselves on being a place where kids could fit in and find their people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know it's very hard to see the signs, but we'll try to get them. Maybe the person next to you can nudge you or something.
Hey, folks. League of Women Voters, Peggy, thank you so much for hosting this event, for the folks working the event, and everyone who came out to attend and took time out of your evening to get to know us, send us your questions, send us your concerns. That's what makes these evenings a lot of fun and really rewarding, and that's where I learn the most when I'm doing these things. My name's Dan Olson. I've got twin dudes in the district. They just started 6th grade at MMW last week. They finished at Clear Springs last year. They're loving their time here, like so many other folks. My wife and I moved here 6-7 years ago for the schools. We knew that we wanted to be in the West Metro. We knew that we wanted great schools for our kids, and we were lucky enough to find a home in Minnetonka. And I ran for this office a couple years ago, and I'm here again, and I feel like public education as a whole has a lot of wind in its sails now after the work that the legislature's done to finally catch us up on some of the funding and some of the resources we've needed. They've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort to invest in our schools across the state, and I know it's still not enough, but it's wonderful to see that emphasis on the state level in something that we prioritize so much on the local level. Right, so we need to accept the challenge from the legislature, I think, and continue to work to make this district the place that is the example for publication in Minnesota to the rest of the country. We have challenges ahead of us. We've got some budget problems on the horizon, but I think there are a lot of people who are equipped to help us handle those things. And I'm looking forward to digging in and doing the work and just helping to settle Minnetonka into equilibrium and fiscal and financial stability. Thanks.
Thank you. And last, Michael Remucal.
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and giving us the opportunity to share our thoughts and ideas about our wonderful school district. My name is Michael Remucal. I'm a parent of 4 children, including 2 graduates of MHS, one of whom I had the pleasure of handing a diploma to in June, and 2 current students who are at MMW and Excelsior Elementary. We have lived in the district for 11 years now, and I hate to break the mold, but we actually moved here because I was working at the hospital in Hutchinson. My wife was working at a hospital in downtown. We tried to split the difference. We were fortunate enough to find a spot and have been so happy to be in the Minnetonka School District. I had the honor of being elected last fall in a special election, and I'm seeking re-election this year. I've been able to spend the past year using my experiences to help shape the district, from my medical training to benefit the Mental Health Advisory Committee, to my current status as a PhD student in healthcare informatics at the U of M, marking my 31st year of formal education, to my family's experience having members who are BIPOC, LGBTQ+, neurodiverse, mental health issues, advanced learners, and even a niece and nephew who open and enroll into the language immersion program. I hope to get reelected so I can continue my work ensuring all students get the education they need to maximize their own personal potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will read the statement from candidate Brandon Voges. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this candidate forum. I'm a husband, father, veteran, and certified registered nurse anesthetist, and am running for Minnetonka School Board to ensure our district regains its academic excellence in safe and secure facilities. Despite our vast resources and incredible educators, 1 in 4 students are not proficient in math, science, and reading. Since 2018, the percentage of students falling short of Minnesota's proficiency standards has increased. I believe a recommitment to strict adherence to academics in the classroom and empowerment of parents will stop the downward trend, and more students will flourish. Furthermore, information stemming from the 2023 parent and residential surveys convey the need to address bullying, lack of discipline, and safety and security. Nearly 1 in 3 elementary and middle school students reported being bullied to their parents. Additionally, 1 in 5 high schoolers say they're bullied. Our students should expect a safe atmosphere in our schools. Parents should be confident in their children's well-being. Our society places emphasis on protecting our politicians, sports stadiums, and banks. Let's protect our most valuable commodity, our children. Our district is great, but there are issues surfacing which must be addressed. I plan on addressing these issues by 1, academic first mentality, 2, parent-school collaboration, and 3, advocating for a security guard at each of our schools. This position will protect our students against potential outside threats, as well as providing a liaison for issues inside our facilities. Lastly, as some educational facilities in our country have begun reinstating mask mandates again, despite the Cochrane study proving their failure, I will support parents' right to choose what is best for their children. Thank you, and please reach out with any further questions. And that was Brandon Voges. Now we'll move on to the questions, and we have a bounty of them. So we'll just jump right in, and we will start with candidate Remucal. The question is, the term parental rights has been used in the election. Please give 1 or 2 specific examples of what that means to you. Candidate Remucal, you have 1 minute.
Thank you for the question. I think parental rights is a difficult term to negotiate. And I think one of the most important things that seems to be conveyed is that there are many people who want parents to be more informed of what's going on with the schools. I know from sheer volume of emails that we get on a daily basis from the school district that we actually get quite a bit of information. And one of the things that I'm always trying to be careful of is thinking about how John Locke described how rights are generated in a government system. Is you have to give up some rights to gain other rights or to protect other rights. So I want to make sure that we are not only making sure parents have those rights, but we're not impinging on other people's rights in the process.
Thank you. Next, candidate Kratoska.
I think a lot of us have schools, are frustrated because our schools are teaching things that we don't want them to teach to our children. And there are certain things that 98% of us agree should be in schools. We should be teaching math, we should be teaching history, science, all of that. And so I think a lot of this frustration over parental rights is coming from a teacher or an administrator talking about things that don't belong in schools, that should be left up to the parents. So I would think we could all agree. Let's let the role of the schools be to educate our kids on the stuff that we all agree they should be educated on, and let's leave the rest to parents. We all have different views about how we want to raise our kids, so we can all talk to our kids about those issues in our own way. Let school be about school.
Thank you. Next, candidate Olson.
Thank you for the question. To me, parental rights, this isn't a term that I really use, but I feel like I exercise those routinely in this district in a couple ways. One of the ways I exercise my parental rights and advocated for my kids, and the way so many other folks have, is I moved here. I enrolled in this district. And for folks who aren't fortunate to live here, they open enrolled in this district. And we're exercising that right to put our kids in the best school district out there and make sure they get the education they deserve. The other way they do that is I communicate with my teachers. I communicate with the administration. If I have concerns, I reach out to them, and I've never had a bad experience or a teacher that hasn't been willing to talk to me about what's going on in the classroom, what difficulties my children are facing, or what they're learning about. So to me, we've got the right to communicate with our teachers, and I think we're all excited that we've got the right to be here.
Thank you. Next, candidate Browne.
So I, like Dan, also don't use the word parental rights, but I do definitely think of us as partners in the education process. And I have lots of examples of where things were going on in a particular class or in a education setting, and I reached out to educators or to administration to find out what was going on, because I always only know what I'm hearing from my side, right? And so I always want to learn what's going on and how can I help be part of the solution. I also see that we have rights to help shape the system. If we feel like the system is not working for our students, then certainly we have rights as adults in this environment to help shape that. I do, however, have concerns about where my rights cross the line into the professional learning environment.
Thank you. Next, candidate Jordan.
When I think about parents and Minnetonka parents, I think of volunteer coaches for baseball, football, soccer. I think of PTO members raising money to do staff appreciation lunches, people selling spirit wear to provide money for the clubs in the high school, class parties, field trips, Vantage mentors, and the senior party. Minnetonka parents are an asset. They are an involved, active participant in the education process. They have the right to choose where the children are educated, whether they're in public school, private school, or homeschooled. They have the right to teach their values in general, and in our vision, we're to work together to educate the children. When I think of parents, that's what I think of.
Thank you. And last, candidate Foss.
Thank you. Not exactly sure what's behind that question. From a school board perspective, I believe the magic happens when the community is involved, parents are involved, students are involved, and administration is involved. So it takes a lot of different pieces of the puzzle to have the magic happen, like I said. And I do think Minnetonka has a very good parent participation, which only makes things better down the road.
Thank you. So we'll be starting with candidate Foss on the next question. So listen carefully. There's a concern that Minnetonka may have a budget shortfall soon because the district can no longer accommodate additional open enrollments. How would you address the shortfall? Candidate Foss.
Yes, I think we have some of the best financial minds that we're really fortunate to have in our district. And on the school board, I would like to really dig into the budget and see where that, what that information is being asked. I think over time, Paul Bourgeois and his team have really saved us a lot of money, and I trust them to give us more options and kind of look 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and find ways that maybe we can be creative or come up with creative solutions for the budget.
Thank you. Next, candidate Browne.
So in 2019, the school board set the cap at $11,100 for open enrollment with the intention of getting back to looking at how might we move forward financially for our future stability and security financially. Of course, the pandemic came, and then there was also social unrest that year. And so it is now time for the board to get back to addressing that issue. And so those of us who are elected to do that will have the honor of serving you in that way. I see three levers. Open enrollment has to be looked at, but I would definitely want to make sure that whatever might be even considered in terms of changing the amount of open enrollment, that we understand the impacts, negative and positive, for doing so. Also, to look at government funding, the operations referendum caps that we're under currently, and how we might work to change that situation. And last and most, I'd be most concerned about this would be cutting programs. But if we do, it's going to be based on programs that serve the most kids, the ones we keep.
Thank you. Next candidate, Remucal.
So the question of the budget was always a little distant. Even the 2 years before I was elected, I spent the vast majority of my time attending school board meetings, and I didn't really grasp it. Being on the school board, and I've had the opportunity to interact with that budget quite a bit more and see what those decisions mean and what the future holds. I think for our school district, while Dan here pointed out that the legislature did spend an awful lot of money in public education, our school district actually is going to be receiving very little of that. And one of the biggest things that we're going to need to focus on the next couple of years is our legislative campaign, trying to convince those legislators that not only for our school district, but for all school districts, that we need to start moving those caps so that schools can get the revenue they need in order to teach students and help survive.
Thank you. Next candidate, Jordan.
In the past 18 years, we haven't had to cut the budget, so this is kind of a new area for us. Unfortunately, with the caps, have already been discussed, if those aren't lifted by the legislature, which I've gone to the legislature to try to advocate for that to happen, and I don't know if it will happen, we are left with probably two levers: more open enrollment or budget cuts. What I would ask of the district is to optimize the budget, and I would ask them to present a plan. If we increase open enrollment, what does that look like? If we cut the budget, what would that look like? And what is a hybrid? I would ask for good information. I would take that information to the community, and I would ask our community to weigh in on their thoughts on that. Ultimately, I believe that the district belongs to the community, and there should be some say in the decisions that get made in this area.
Thank you. Next candidate, Kratoska.
A couple weeks ago, we had a meeting with Superintendent Law and some people at the district where they talked about this very issue. And someone had mentioned Paul. Although he's a Packer fan, I found him otherwise really bright, and he laid it out for us really well. And I think Sally mentioned it. There really are three levers: get more funding from the state. Oh, that was you. Get more funding from the state, increase open enrollment, or cut programs. And as Karen mentioned, it just doesn't seem like there's an appetite for increasing that cap at the legislature. So that leaves us with really two. And unfortunately, whichever one we choose, we're going to be disappointing some people. I mean, there is open enrollment leads to overcrowding. Budget cuts means that we're cutting programs for some people who really like it. So I think your choice here in the audience is then who has the most common sense. Who do you trust to make those tough decisions?
Thank you. And finally, Dan Olson.
Thank you. Budgets are kind of my jam. I like digging into this stuff. And I just want to start with saying, like, open enrollment is not the only reason that we're in this hole, the cap. You know, we've got budget deficit projections coming because, like Mike alluded to, the state hasn't kept up with inflation. The state funding hasn't kept up with the increase of personnel costs and everything like that. So the work that we're doing through the case committee, appealing to the legislature, even if we don't think it's likely, that's important work. We got to try to secure the funding on that front. We really need to pass the technology levy that's going to be on the ballot this year. That's probably going to come up as a question, but I just want to emphasize that up front. If we're facing a budget deficit already, we don't need that hole to be $9 million deeper a year. We want to make sure that's funded. And yeah, like Chris alluded to, this is about putting our heads together and doing the hard work, weighing the pros and cons of increasing enrollment, eliminating programs. How do we tweak the budget and dig into those lines to be as minimally impactful as possible and preserve everything that's important to all of us?
Thank you. So our next question, we will start with candidate Olson. Would you support additional diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff? What, if anything, should Minnetonka be doing differently in this area?
I think more professional development training is good for everybody. I mean, I'm not up here, there are people I'm at this table with that are experts in areas that I'm not. I could probably use more DEI training as well. That would make me a more empathetic, understanding, culturally aware person, help me to meet children and other educators and staff on their level. But the trick with that is finding the time and finding the budget. I know the district and the calendar committee has done a lot of great work this year to shift things around and open up more professional development hours for our teachers and things like that. I hope some of that can be dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion training opportunities. But I just believe that if we can afford to do it and there's a way to do it and we have the time to do it, we should all do everything we can to learn about our neighbors and make sure we see them for who they are and support them for who they are.
Thank you. Next, candidate Jordan.
I think when it comes to training, that I would want to know what the teachers feel that they're lacking in. I know that we have an increased push now on literacy, and there will be some new training for that. The calendar committee has done a great job in changing up, the training, so it looks like the teachers will have some great chunks of time versus 2 hours here and 2 hours there. So I think that's a great opportunity for training. But I do know that with literacy and the READ Act coming, that there will be a lot of targeted training that our teachers have to go through. And ultimately, I would want to know from the teachers, where do you feel you're lacking, and what can we do to better support you in the classroom so that you can make sure that our students are learning at their top peak.
Thank you. Next, candidate Browne.
I've already mentioned my involvement with the Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education, so you might already assume that, yes, of course, I'm for this. Although I also agree with what Dan and Karen have said, is that we have time and cost constraints as well. So I also want to add in that my family's own experience in this is my husband and 2 of our children are refugees from the war in Sierra Leone. So they came here as English language learners and as dark-skinned children in a very strange land. And so I have a very specific view on this that makes me passionate about it. But I think what we do here is bake it into the cake in every way that we can, and the board can help do that by setting the culture. Also, there's already work underway through the commitment to the multi-tiered systems of support and the work through the Search Institute that is already providing some training and support to all of our staff. So I think the good news is we're doing it.
Thank you. Next, candidate Remucal.
I would support additional training for the staff. As one of our board goals is in the area of belonging, I think having the teachers, the administration, even the school board itself receive training about how to understand other cultures better, how to make sure that we are welcoming those other cultures so that they're not feeling alone, separated, alienated from the rest of the school district. Belonging is so important, and that work that we're doing is hopefully going to have an impact on things like bullying. You know, when people feel like they belong and other people feel like they are respected, I think we see a decrease in bullying, and I think those things, DEI training at the staff level for the teachers can definitely help with that sort of thing. They can help set the tone for the entire community.
Thank you. Next, candidate Foss.
Inclusion is essential to public education. A sense of belonging is a critical element to the learning process. Respect for each other and the ability to empathize with each other are the keys to life. The good news is that connectedness and belonging is the #1 board goal for this year. It is already being done at the school level. There are team leaders at each building, and underneath that there are student groups specifically related to connectedness and belonging. So I do trust that this is a current goal, and it has been a goal actually of the board for quite a while. And you can actually see it in action when you are in the schools. There's more empathy, so that's a good thing. It's being done.
Thank you. Finally, candidate Kratoska.
Well, I think these programs are well-meaning. We all up here want our kids to feel safe in school. You can't learn if you don't feel safe. In Minnetonka, we care about results, not intentions. And I've talked to a bunch of teachers and administrators and most importantly, students over this campaign. And a point that a student brought up to me is, if he sat through a program presenting on microaggressions and he finds out that well-meaning questions like where are you from or what do you do are now considered harmful. What's going to be the result of sitting through this program? Are you going to go and build more bridges and make more connections with people of a different group? Or are you going to retreat into your shell because you're afraid of saying the wrong thing? So I think we need to be careful with this kind of thing. We need to treat our students as individuals, not box them into groups.
Thank you. So on to a new topic, and we'll be starting with candidate Kratoska. What process should the district follow when parents request a book be removed from the classroom or library? Specifically, for what reasons should books be removed? Who should be part of the process, and who should be informed?
Yeah, I just became aware of this issue during the campaign. I wasn't aware that it was a concern before this. So I haven't had a ton of time to think about it. I think we'd all agree there are some books that should be in schools. We should teach about the American Revolution. I think we should all agree that there's some material that shouldn't be in schools, and then there's a fair amount of gray area in the middle. As I've talked to people, I've been called too conservative to vote for and too liberal to vote for. One person called me too liberal because I wasn't in favor of taking out certain books. My general thought process here is let's trust the teachers on this subject. If the teachers think that this is going to be beneficial for their class, they're the ones in their class all day, every day. If a parent asks for it to be removed, the process. I got to think about that. I don't have a good answer to that question right now, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, candidate Olson.
I got to echo what Chris said here. I think we really need to trust our teachers. They know their students. They know what they can handle at their ages, what they're ready to learn, what they're ready to read. There's always the chance that somebody's going to find some book particularly objectionable in a classroom. And based on my experience in the Minnetonka School District, if I ever had a concern about a book like that in my teacher's classroom, I would have reached out to my teacher and I could communicate to them that, hey, maybe I don't want my kid to read this book. But I don't think we need to be removing books from the classroom that our teachers think are a good fit for our kids. We're here because we trust our teachers. We're here for the education that Minnetonka Schools provides, and I think as long as we're all engaging in honest communication and keeping our kids in mind, let's trust our teachers and just handle those things on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
On the one hand, we are talking about literacy quite a bit, and on the other hand, we're talking about banning books. It seems opposite to me. I'm glad that students are reading books. In general, I don't believe this is a school board issue. I think this is mostly the library issue and at the school level. in general, I don't believe in banning books unless there is just a proven obscenity or question of why. But yeah, I don't believe that's really a school board issue.
Thank you. Candidate Browne.
I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I appreciate the answers given so far. I would say, no, I would not be in favor of banning books. I do trust our professional media center specialists as well as the teachers to make age-appropriate decisions. And a lot of the things I hear bantered about really have to do with age-appropriateness of materials. And I think if we probe those a little bit, we would find the materials people are concerned about are not actually in the hands of the wrong age group. But in terms of response, in case someone does have a concern, those avenues are already open. You absolutely can reach out to teachers, media center specialists, administrators to talk about your concerns and have those registered.
Thank you. Candidate Remucal.
Thank you. Book banning seems to be a really hot topic right now, so much so that the Minnesota School Board Association during their summer session actually had a session available on the legality of book banning. And it's really interesting because I think one of the most important things is there are actually a lot of rights that are involved, First Amendment rights, that are involved with removing a book. I think the proper way of handling that process in the Minnetonka School District involves our usual chain of command, which is to talk to the teacher, in this case the media specialist. If there's concern that it wasn't addressed, then that gets elevated to the principal, which then gets elevated up to the level of the higher administration, the district administration. Usually the school board doesn't get directly involved unless it becomes an actual legal battle. I do think a thorough review of that book by the administration is important to make sure that the concerns are understood and that they are addressed and that the appropriate decision is made.
Thank you. Finally, Candidate Jordan.
Many of us are hearing in the headlines about book banning, but is it really happening in Minnetonka is the big question I had. So I went to speak with our associate superintendent, Amy Ledoux, who would be in charge of curriculum, which adding and removing books. We discussed the fact that there are actually policies in the school board, set 606 and 607, that govern bringing the books and textbooks and other materials into the classroom. There's a committee process that it all goes through, and then the materials brought to the school board to be approved. I asked her, have we had books banned? And she's been working here since 2020, and she said she's had some people reach out and get the form to fill out to start the process, but no one has actually completed the process to try to have something removed officially like that. So I think while we're hearing a lot about it in the headlines, it doesn't seem to be happening here in Minnetonka.
Thank you. So for our next question, we'll be starting with Candidate Jordan. What, if anything, should Minnetonka schools be doing differently with regard to LGBTQ students? Candidate Jordan.
With a question like that, I'm hearing that we want to make sure that all of our children feel like they have a place here and that they belong and are connected. And I think that is something every child wants, is to feel like they have a connection and community. And that's something that, as adults, I hope that we're modeling for our children. I hope we are showing them how we can connect and that we all belong here. We all want to feel like we're part of this very special place. So if I had a group that felt that they didn't feel that way, I would start by sitting down with them and asking them, what's your Minnetonka experience and how can I help make it better? Because I think it's important to go to the source and ask those questions so that we can hear what the experience is.
Thank you. Candidate Remucal.
I think doing everything we can to promote that sense of belonging in our school district for LGBTQ plus students is really important, as it is for all of our students of the various minority groups. Having a family member who is in the LGBTQ plus community we've seen how difficult that can be for students, even though there aren't necessarily overt things that the district is doing in terms of staff and teachers. The students themselves, a lot of times, can be creating the problems. And so creating that sense of belonging, having the teachers and staff set the tone and trying to create that welcome scenario for them so that those students do feel like they're belonging in our community, I think can go a long ways to help out the situation.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
In all my years of teaching, I've worked with many kids who would fit in this category. How did I make them feel safe and accepted? By treating them just like everyone else. They are just like everyone else. They're kids. And we want to listen to their thoughts, their ideas, and teach the subject at hand. It never occurred to me to ask them to whom they were attracted or what was in between their legs. It never struck me as an appropriate topic for an educator to discuss with a child. So the way we make them feel safe and accepted is by treating them just like everyone else. Because they are. They're just like everyone else. Teach the subject at hand. Make school about school.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
So my boys were born on the East Coast, and when my wife and I were looking at schools and everything, where we wanted to move, we wanted a place that was affordable, and we wanted a place where we knew they could grow up to be whoever they grew up to be, whoever they loved. And that's why we're in Minnesota, because we knew that whoever our boys would grow up to be, they were growing up in a safe space. And we need to make sure that that happens in our buildings as well. I don't think we can ignore our kids' feelings and just focus on the task at hand. I don't think we can just put our heads down and pretend the world is all about academics when our kids are wrestling with real issues about mental health tied to the changes that they're going through in puberty and who they might be attracted to. We need to ensure that our schools are safe places where our kids can identify allies that they can talk to if they're having a tough time. Have conversations they may not be able to have at home. Have safe spaces where they can be themselves and know that they're accepted and truly belong.
Thank you. Next, Candidate Foss.
Obviously, a system that discriminates in any way will not be tolerated. A school board equips the administration and staff to champion belonging and connectedness in every building. As a board member, my role would be governance and putting policies in place and structures in place. We want to make sure that kids are supported and safe and have all of the resources that they need. Policies and structure in place. Oh, I just said, sorry. Ensuring that they have all of the resources that they need.
Thank you. Finally, Candidate Browne.
So of all the marginalized groups of students and families in our community, it is the LGBTQ community that is the most prone to bullying and self-harm. The statistics will bear that out. And so I think it's really important that we do address this and that we fully acknowledge people for as they are. I think back to a time in my professional career as part of an organization, this had to have been 20 years ago, where we had a program that we called Bring Your Whole Self to Work, and it was specifically geared around issues of LGBTQ in recognition that when people show up and have to put on some kind of a mask or a barrier so that you don't really know their true selves, they cannot perform at their highest levels. And so I want for all of our LGBTQ students, families, and anyone who identifies as anything else, that they are in an environment that is truly supportive of them being their whole selves. So bring your whole self to Minnetonka schools.
Thank you. Our next question is a lightning round question. I'm just going to go right down the table and ask for a yes or no question. So starting with Sally Browne. The question is, yes or no, do you support the tech levy?
Yes.
Candidate Browne, Candidate
Yes.
Foss,
Yes.
Candidate Jordan?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Very good lightning round. All right. For our next question, we'll start with candidate Remucal. As a board member, how would you work to address the needs of specific groups of students, such as those with neurological disorders, students dealing with trauma, students with special needs, special ed needs, etc.? Do you have any particular experience with these type of students? Candidate Remucal.
Yeah, so we're not doing the lightning round, correct? Okay, just wanted to make sure. That did not seem like a yes or no question. I have members of my own family who have pretty much all of those issues spread out throughout our family. So I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of special interest in that. In fact, I'm was asked to be on the to be the board representative to the school district 287, who is a special ed district that we joined through a board vote last just over the summer. So I will actually, at least until the end of this year, and hopefully the next year, I will be representing our school district in a special education specialized school district. So there are lots of things that we can do. One of them is to reach out to other school districts for help when we need it. But I think I think funding is one of the areas that we need to look at, how we do things in order to make sure that those students get the education they deserve.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
Yeah, I've also got kids on an IEP. My wife is a sped para in the district, so she sort of wrestles with some of the challenges that come to our schools every day. And our schools absolutely need people like special ed teachers and sped paras like my wife and all kinds of paras to offer support to our classrooms, because all of our kids are different. All of our kids have individual needs, and we need to try to meet them as best we can as a district. And I think the way to look at a lot of these issues is to look at our budget. And I'm not saying we need to do anything different or change anything, but just do a deep dive on the budget, because our budget reflects our priorities as a district. And we just want to make sure that the students who need extra help, who are on IEPs, who are in SPED programs, that those funds are being spent appropriately and that we're fighting for them to have just as many opportunities as the rest of the kids in our district.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
I love this question. Neurodiverse kids are my people. I mentioned briefly in my opening comments my business where we taught coding to kids, and it was a magnet for these types of kids. And the story I kept hearing from parents was, we tried t-ball, but that didn't work, and piano didn't really happen, and without hopefully sounding too braggy, at my business, they found a place where they could experience success. And they found people who were listening to them and really cared about them. So how do we translate this into the school district? The number one thing we need to do is involve the parents. The parents know their kids. They know how they learn. They know what works. They know what doesn't. And so that would be the very first and foremost thing that we have to do. But yeah, I do bring a wealth of experience working with these kids. I just love them. And our district is better off with them in it.
Thank you. Candidate Jordan.
Great question. I've been speaking with a lot of special ed parents recently, and they have a lot of concerns. We have 1,400 students in the district with IEPs. There are approximately 11,100 students total. I would like to see a deep dive, and I would love to hear more from the parents, what their experiences are, because ultimately, we need to be sure that children who are experiencing special needs are getting what they need today. Time is really precious for them, and early interventions are key, and I'm excited that we're going to have more with the READ Act, more emphasis on dyslexia. I have some relatives who've had dyslexia issues, and I recognize that there's a lot to be done, and I look forward to trying to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
I am committed to ensuring that child-centered excellence for all children at all stages of all abilities and in all programs. And most importantly, ensuring that our district provides all these children with the tools they need to be successful. Seeing all, serving all, supporting all children where they are at any given time. There are lots of tools in place currently for interventions, and we have, I truly believe that we have the best teachers and the best staff who truly care about their students. So I think it's important to trust our teachers and staff as the professionals that they are, and just make sure that they have the resources in place.
Thank you. Finally, candidate Browne.
So with 6 kids, you might imagine that you're going to hit a kid with a neurological difference, right? Neurodiversity. And so one of them happens to be in the audience tonight from my family, and she's proud to say that. So she certainly received accommodations. And I think the question also included things, students who may have experienced trauma in their life and other things. I also have 2 students particularly who, as refugees from a civil war, arrived in this country with early childhood trauma, and that was addressed through the Minnetonka schools as well. And so first of all, I applaud the services that we have received from this district. I know how critically important they are to a student even being able to walk into a school in the morning. So I would entirely support and continue to fund all efforts for that. I also want to highlight that this past year, a disability studies program class was launched at the high school, the first in the nation. It is incredible, and I hope more and more students will sign up to attend that class, because the more people understand, the more we will help each other.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with candidate Kratoska. What organizations have you been endorsed by or received financial support from, and how does this help voters understand who you are as a candidate? Candidate Kratoska.
I have not been endorsed formally by any organizations, at least that I know of. And what was the second part of the question?
And how does this help voters understand who you are as a candidate?
So I suppose that doesn't help you at all.
Next, candidate Jordan.
Endorsements, yeah. At this point, I will say that the only organization that I'm in the talks with about endorsement is the Minnetonka Teachers Association. In past years, they held a forum to meet candidates for school board. This year, they've chosen to do an endorsement process. I'm engaged in that process. It's still playing out, so I don't know whether I've gotten an endorsement or not. So, and I have not gotten any funding from any organizations.
Thank you. Next, candidate Olson.
Hey there, no funding from any organizations at all, just individual donations from friends, family, and folks in the community. As far as endorsements go, like Karen, I also responded to the teachers, and I'm looking forward to speaking to them about their interests as far as the election goes. The group of folks who are trying to hold on to ranked choice voting in Minnetonka, I've talked with them. I support their efforts. I think they support my candidacy. I don't know if that qualifies as an endorsement, but we like what each other is doing. I've reached out to Outfront Minnesota and filled out their questionnaire. I've reached out to Moms Demand Action and filled out their questionnaire, because LGBTQ rights and gun violence in this country are important issues to me. And I don't know if Chris and Brandon, I know we're endorsed by the Minnesota Parents Alliance. They have statements on their website, if that helps anybody.
Thank you. Next, candidate Browne.
Likewise, I have no funding or endorsements currently from any organization, although I also applied for endorsement from the Minnetonka Teachers Association, as well as Outfront Minnesota, and I am not looking for any others at this time.
Thank you. Candidate Remucal.
This is my 3rd year of campaigning. I have not received any funding from any organizations. I have been endorsed in the past by Outfront Minnesota and by Moms Demand Gun Action. They have endorsed me in the past. The endorsement process is ongoing right now, so I don't know that we would have a lot of endorsements. So.
And finally, candidate Foss.
I have not sought out any endorsements. The Minnetonka Teachers Association I am working with currently, and I would really only work with organizations that I feel in alignment with, and I have received no funding.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll be starting with candidate Foss. What do you think of the current school board goals? Should any be changed, and why?
I truly align with these current school board goals. I believe in the well-being of every student, the connectedness, the learning parts of the school board goals. I think they're very well thought out. I think the school board has great vision for our district, and I think that if I'm able to earn your trust as a school board member, I would align with those goals.
Thank you. Next candidate, Remucal.
The current school board goals, I guess I can honestly say that I agree with them. I actually voted for them, so, and I would like to think that I helped shape them in a meaningful way. I think we've done a lot in the last year. One of the interesting things is that we have actually stepped up the process. Superintendent Law has actually moved up our timetable, which is great. We're actually going to be discussing much farther in advance our board goals. I think one of the things that we've done in the last year is really paid attention to the data that's coming in, and when we saw that the literacy rates were down, we actually made that part of the board goals within the last year and a half. So we are, one of the things that I like about the board goals is that they are continuously changing, and we're continuously looking at what the data is coming in, what the information we're getting in from parents, and how we shape those goals every year.
Thank you. Candidate Browne.
I likewise support the current goals. I think given our financial challenges that are ahead of us, that's probably one that we're going to want to emphasize in the coming year to add into there. Regardless of what goals we head into next year, I would like to see our goals include leading indicators that we can share with the public, kind of as bellwethers of whether we're tracking on the goals that we set for the year. And remember, all the goals align to the vision for our future, and so there is continuity there, and I think the more that we can share that with the public and have everybody align both on the vision and the goals to get there, the more we will all feel included and powerful in how we contribute.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
I don't know how you can sit up here and not be aligned with our board goals. You know, goals are aspirational things. They reflect where we want to go and how we want to grow as a district. And in their very nature, it means we've done some self-reflection on ways we are imperfect and ways we can improve. And I'm happy that we have a board that continues to do that self-reflection work session after session, and continues to raise the bar for itself. I agree with Sally that finances probably need to be a goal on the table, and I just look forward to the goals being a living, breathing, changing thing. As long as we're looking at ourselves critically, imagining how we can do better for our community and our kids, and incorporating our community's vision for our district into our goals, then I think we're on the right track and creating the right place for our kids.
Thank you. Candidate Jordan.
I would say that I align with the board goals. I sat through the sessions when they were coming to be, and I have to say that the board that we currently have has done a phenomenal amount of work. They are visionary people. They have tried to set up the district so that the future is bright, which is one thing that I would want to continue doing. It's a lot of work to look to the future while there's daily things going on, but they seem to do it year after year, and I greatly appreciate the work that they've put into all of this. I agree that the budget is going to have to be something that we look at, but I do feel that that's something that can be handled. again, support the goals. I think our board has done a great job, and I like that they are adopted earlier in the year so that the staff has a chance and teachers have a chance to look at them before the beginning of the year. I think that was a nice move.
Thank you. And last candidate, Kratoska.
Very little to add. Everybody said it really well. We need goals in order so we know what to aim for. And the board's done a great job of setting these up. I agree with them fully. Yeah, they need to be amended and changed from time to time, but we're in a good spot with our goals right now, so I'm in full agreement.
All right, we'll be starting with candidate Olson on our next question. School boards in the Twin Cities and across Minnesota are adding non-voting student representatives to their boards. What are your thoughts on this, candidate Olson?
I can't think of a more important voice to add to our board. If we're going to add anybody, I think it should be the students. I think having that perspective on the board is invaluable. I know we have students on members of our committees and things like that, but I think it's really important to give our students the opportunity to bring their concerns, what's bubbling up in their grade level and everything to the board so the community can see it as a whole. You know, we don't always get to see the action that happens in the committees. We don't get to see our kids during the hall every day, but you know, bringing their concerns, airing them out in the light of day, just giving them a voice, giving the district some transparency, and incorporating their voice into our decision-making as a board in a really meaningful way, I think is a very aspirational thing, and that would really excite me.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
Student input is very important to the school board, and we can see this in many different areas. There are student listening sessions where they are in the board room, and the board can take that information and go back and evaluate the goals that they had heard. There are student belonging groups in the schools, but it is very important to the board to have the student input. I just think it's probably best right now where they are at the school level and then being brought in for the listening sessions.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing idea. You know, we do have student surveys. We do have the groups that Kemerie just mentioned. You know, the one drawback I see is if we have one member of the student body speaking to the board, we are only getting one perspective. And so that's one thing that these groups and surveys allow us to do is hear from the broad group of students more than just one perspective. But I will say, as I've been meeting with parents and administrators and students, no offense to any of you, but my favorite group to meet with has been the students. It's been really, really fun to hear their experiences in the schools. And more, I'll leave it at that. It's been really, really fun to hear them, and so I'd be definitely open to the idea.
Thank you. Next candidate, Remucal.
Student members on the school board is actually something that we have discussed recently on the school board. And I am in support of it. I attended a couple talks at the national conference this past spring, and some of the other schools gave their experience, and the students that are elected usually are chosen by their fellow students to be the student representatives are usually tasked with the responsibility of gathering as much information from their fellow students as possible so that when they attend board meetings, they're actually attending very well armed with the information, the perspective of as many students as fellow students as they possibly can. So I think having their input, in addition to the ways like the student listening sessions, we have student members on many of our committees, getting that additional input during board meetings would be really valuable.
Thank you. Candidate Browne.
I've been an advocate of student representation to the school board for a few years now, and they would be the model that Mike suggests, which would be elected by their peers and probably have a few students so that they could rotate responsibilities, et cetera. There are some local districts that model this for us. I have, however, learned that it is a difficult model to maintain because as students roll through their classes, right, we lose them, right? And now you got to bring a new kid up and get them acclimated. And so that can be challenging. I don't want to give up on that idea, though. And one of the reasons for that is that this year, the current school board has been, actually started last year, bringing in student representation to board meetings almost every time. And it has been so enriching. And those students are sharp, man. So there is a lot that they can contribute to the conversation and to carry back to their classmates.
Thank you. Finally, candidate Jordan.
Currently, we do have students who give their voice through committees. I'm on the Teaching and Learning Advisory Committee, and students regularly give their input, which is very valuable. I support having listening sessions. In fact, I would be supportive of even more listening sessions because I do think it's important to hear the student voice. They have such an amazing perspective, and I think it's a great learning experience for them to be able to advocate for themselves in that manner. I would wonder, though, if choosing someone to serve on the school board, how we would choose that person and how it's difficult, I think, to find one or two people to represent multiple views. The other concern I would have is, in this somewhat politicized environment, would we be making a child a target of negative social media that could happen if the student came and said something that somebody didn't like? So that I find is a concern. The other thing is, I haven't noticed at the board meetings that I've been at that there are any students actually attending, so I don't know if there is the huge desire to be part of the meetings on their part or not.
Thank you. So for our next question, we'll be starting with candidate Remucal. The Board of Education has a conflict of interest policy for all board members. Do you foresee any of your personal business or other activities as conflicts with that policy?
No business conflicts. I'm a student, so I don't have any business conflicts that I know of, and I don't foresee any. We don't have any in the family that I know of or would foresee any arising in the future.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
No, I don't foresee it. I've been careful not to mention the name of my business because I don't want this to be perceived as me trying to market for it. But we're outside the district, so I don't foresee that being a problem at all.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
No, I don't see any conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
I think I mentioned my wife is a sped para in the district, so if there were any labor or contractual issues that dealt with her union, I would probably have to recuse myself from those. But other than that, no business interests or conflicts whatsoever.
Thank you. Candidate Jordan.
No conflicts of interest for me.
Thank you. And candidate Browne.
No conflicts of interest for me.
Okay. So for our next question, we'll start with candidate Browne, and this is our last question. So this is one I have never seen before because the topic is so new. Given the rapid rise in use of and easy availability of artificial intelligence, what changes should be made to district policy?
Ooh, people, please vote for that tech levy because we're going to need some tech money to address this, I think. So I actually use ChatGPT professionally, but cautiously. I do a lot of technical writing and other kinds of writing, and I will often use artificial intelligence to help me gather information in a cohesive way, and then I have to check it because there's often errors. And we have probably all heard that there are great and well-founded fears that students are going to be producing work for submission to class using this intelligence, and how will educators know? And what does that do to the learning process? So as a board member, I certainly would want to look at how are we investing in our response to that. And again, please vote yes on the tech levy.
Thank you. Next, candidate Jordan.
Great topic, right? I think that we need to wrap our heads around this one for sure. I would want to talk with people in the software industry to find out what their thoughts are on this. In Minnetonka, I feel like we always go to the experts when we're faced with a problem, so I think we should start there. Cheating, obviously, I think is a real concern, but it also can be an exciting tool, potentially, to be used in our classes. So I think we're going to have a fair amount of work to do. Right now, as I understand it, we don't have a policy on this. I could be wrong on that. Superintendent Law, don't yell at me if I am back there. I do think we definitely need to wrap our heads around it, talk to the experts in the field, and put a policy together that allows us to potentially use it in the classroom, but keep our students from having the opportunity to cheat.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
Yeah, this is wild, right? I'm actually a student right now as well, and we're dealing with this in a few of my classes, and our professors have wildly varying instructions for us, from you can use it to a study tool to generate outlines and things like that, to just stay away from it entirely. I mean, not using it, not cheating, not plagiarizing, that's rule number one. How do we detect that? That's going to be a huge problem going forward. But like Karen was saying, it's a fascinating tool for people to flex different creative and intellectual muscles that they didn't have. Like one of my 11-year-old kids can draw better than I'll ever be able to draw, but I can type a prompt into an AI and see an image that I have in my head. And I don't think we can ignore the potential of that, but we maybe need to look to the state and the Minnesota School Board Association and the teachers unions to guide us on what sort of broad policies can we develop for the usage of this technology while still giving our teachers and districts a little bit of freedom to use it as they see appropriate and fit in their classrooms.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
I would first ask if this is even on the board's radar. Usually they are way ahead of the topics at hand, so I would kind of start there and see if this has been, a hot button at this point. If there's anything that's kind of any policies that are currently being looked at, it's probably going to, I would have to understand the data points to really make an informed response to this question, because I know very little about it. But I do trust, once again, that we would have the experts around helping us through this if it was to become a policy.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
Well, I love this question. I work in the coding field, so I would consider myself a bit of an expert on this. One stat for you all really quickly, 70% of Gen Z is using AI right now. As of a year ago, we can no longer assign 5-paragraph essays or book reports as homework. That just has to stop. It is not viable. But I agree with the rest of the people. We have a huge opportunity to use this as a tool. Back in the 60s and 70s, when calculators were becoming a thing, there was a bit of a fear that kids were not going to learn how to do math. They were going to cheat and use calculators. And the solution ended up being, we actually ended up teaching more advanced math throughout school. So we have that opportunity here. One thing that I think we could really leverage AI for, we have the ability to give kids, every kid in the district if we wanted to, or certainly kids with IEPs, their own AI-powered tutors. We can absolutely do this for a really cost-effective, sorry, I'm being told I'm out of time. I could go on for a while on this subject.
Thank you. Finally, candidate Remucal.
So in the world of healthcare informatics, one of the areas that is being looked at, the healthcare informatics is the data science of medicine. And one of the areas that we are definitely exploring is artificial intelligence. As you can imagine, a physician, a nurse, their days can get so much faster if you have a computer who is helping you shortcut some of the decisions that you have to make. There are obviously dangers that are inherent in that, and I've had instructors at the University of Minnesota demonstrate how it can be used, what some of its shortcomings are. There are policies around technology use, there are policies around plagiarism in the school district, but there isn't a policy specifically about artificial intelligence, I think one of the problems is that it's so new that we just don't even know what to do with it yet. So we are going to be looking to the Minnesota School Board Association, the national organizations for guidance as far as how to deal with it.
Thank you. So that wraps up our question section, and we will now move to closing statements. You have 1 minute each, and we're going to go in reverse order of how we started. So we'll start with candidate Remucal.
Thank you again for everybody for attending in person, online. Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting. Last year they weren't able to do this, and so it's been nice to get back to this format. It's really nice to be able to hear us all interact, even as a candidate, to hear us all interact and to hear some of the ideas that are out there. I am hoping that I am able to be reelected because there's so much that we've done, that I've been able to do with the school district in the last year, that I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a chance to do that for another 4 years and to continue the work that I've just only started. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Olson.
My job here in the next couple months, talking with you folks, I'm not going to sit here and try to prove to you that I know everything or have solutions to everything. I don't. But I'm here to listen. Your ideas and your solutions are the pieces of information we really need on the board, because we need to incorporate everything out in the community to build this into the place we want to be. I want to be a professional. I want to be a collaborator. We've got tough budgetary issues and discussions that we need to have, and I want to do those out in the open. I want to do them directly. I want to ideate on a bunch of solutions and figure out how we can keep this district as excellent as it is and be proud of it when our time on the board is up, the way the current members feel. I'm here because of my boys, and I'm here because I really trust and believe in our teachers and trust and believe in this administration, and I just want to help them do whatever I can contribute to give them the tools to succeed.
Thank you. Candidate Kratoska.
Thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. Thank you guys all for coming out. Thank you also to the other candidates. They've been really nice and friendly. It's been really actually quite fun to be with them. I'm going to skip my closing statement. I want to talk more about the AI-powered tutor idea, because I got cut off before, but I just want to say this. If we put this idea in place, if we really use this technology, we can reduce the workload on teachers and paras, and at the same time give our kids a more personalized, deeper education. I mean, with these AI tutors, you are able to role play that you're talking to Benjamin Franklin. You can set the grade level. You can set the subject and the particularities of the kid, the individual, and we can be really cost effective with this while increasing the level of coding education, really taking advantage of AI. Back in 2014, we led the way. Minnetonka did by putting coding education in place here. Now every neighboring school district has that. I call on us again to lead the way in this field. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jordan.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and thank you to our audience. It's involved parents and community members like you who help make Minnetonka's schools so special. My vision is to maintain Minnetonka's excellence while continuing to ask the question, how do we improve and what is next for our students? Our community deserves a school district that is financially solid, with safe schools that provide a world-class education for every student who walks through the front door. And every means every. Tomorrow morning, 11,100 students will be walking through the front door, and it's my hope and what my commitment, if I am on the board, to make sure that when they walk out in the evening, that they do so with more abilities and skills that will help them to have a successful future. Please visit my website at jordanfortonka.com. I hope you will consider supporting me, Karen Jordan, on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Foss.
I love the Minnetonka School District. I hope that's come across. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about public education. What the district has accomplished in the past is very good, but I think we need to continue improving and evolving as the world around us is changing. I actually do look at challenges as opportunities, so I think that's a good thing that I could bring to the board as well. I'm committed to ensuring child-centered excellence for all children of all stages, of all abilities, in all programs. And most importantly, ensuring that our district provides all children with the tools that they need to be successful. And as one of my heroes, Mr. Rogers, said, the two most powerful words in the English language are thank you. So I would like to thank you to the League of Women Voters for arranging this important event in democracy. I hope to earn your trust and vote for one of the 4 available seats on November 7th. There's also early voting on 9/22. And I welcome your thoughts and questions at my website, KemerieFoss4Schoolboard.com.
Thank you. And finally, candidate Browne.
I also would like to thank the League of Women Voters, and a special shout out to the tech folks in the booth back there for making the live stream possible and the recording for everyone to view going forward. I will reiterate what I started with. I feel called to contribute my experience in the district, my familiarity with board operations, my many community connections, my professional skills, and my broad perspectives to service of this community through the Minnetonka School Board. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the 3 candidates who will not be running, the 3 incumbents not running for re-election, because those are really big shoes to fill. So Lisa Wagner, Katie Becker, and Mark Ambrosen. We will do you proud. I think whoever is selected here will do their best to fill those shoes. I ask you to please vote for me this year in the election on November 7th, early voting starting September 22nd. And I ask you to remember just one thing. Sally Browne for school board. So when you talk to your neighbors, that's easy to remember when you go to the polls.
Thank you to the candidates, the audience, and those viewing this forum on cable and video for your participation in this candidate forum. The forum has been broadcast live and will be rebroadcast until the election on November 7th. You can also see www.lwvmeph.org for a link to the streaming video. We now conclude our formal event. You are welcome to meet the candidates informally in the lobby, and this room will be closed at 8:30 p.m., so thank you.